Hello and welcome back to the Puncher's Chance podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing Vergil Ortiz versus Serhii Bohachuk, one of the fight of the year contenders, and of course the rest of that card as well. We're going to be talking about the possibility of some new technology coming into boxing, the future of Olympic boxing and amateur boxing, and then of course, as always, previewing and predicting next weekend's fights on the Boxing News app. Now, that Vergil Ortiz Bohachuk fight, obviously Vergil Ortiz won a 12-rounder majority decision, dropped twice in the fight. There's a few people saying, should he have won? Should he have lost? Let us know down below if you guys have an opinion who you thought won that fight, maybe how you scored it. Let us know. I'll jump right into you for this one, Harry. That fight, I mean, it was a phenomenal fight to begin with, but what was your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, like you say, it was definitely up there with fight of the year so far. Bohachuk, how he didn't go down throughout that fight, and you look on Twitter and you see a lot of people saying two knockdowns and Vergil Ortiz won. I thought he won a lot of the early rounds and then finished strongly. So I think I can understand why the judges went for Ortiz. But yeah, 130, 130, and I don't think that was the right way of scoring it. I think Ben had it quite wide by like 5 rounds, which I can kind of agree with. But yeah, it was a decent fight, decent performance by Vergil Ortiz, and yeah, it's just one of those fights where you wake up Sunday morning and you either want to it's a task to catch up with it, and it's always like, oh, I wish this isn't going 12 rounds, but it was actually, I was quite happy that it went 12 rounds because I was really enjoying it.
Yeah, like you said, it's difficult sometimes to look at a fight and see a fighter that's been dropped twice and still win on the scorecards. You'd normally expect them to lose at that point, but I had him winning quite comfortable in the end. I think I scored a 115, 111 by the time the fight was over, and even with the second knockdown, I still think Ortiz got up in the 8th round and still won that round, even though he was dropped early in the round. I think he won majority of the rounds of the fight, really. And I was sat here last week saying that there was no way that the fight was going to go the distance, because between them it's like 194% knockout rate, but the both of them can hit hard, but they can also take a punch, as you could see on Saturday night. And yeah, like you said, Bohachuk done really well to stay on his feet, and I'm surprised he wasn't dropped himself.
Yeah, I mean, the whole fight I thought was a bit of a not a weird fight in the sense, but it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting. Ortiz started it quite slick, quite impressive on the outside, and then they kind of drew each other into that inside fight, and Vergil Ortiz still had the upper hand, and then obviously I don't know if it was because they scored that knockdown then to Bohachuk that kind of woke him up a little bit. But those middle rounds, the way he was able to turn the fight back on his favor, was a brilliant. And I think when we talk about like fights of the year and fights that we think are brilliant, 9 times out of 10, it's when somebody halfway through a fight has been able to turn the fight. You think Usyk Fury, you think Fraser Clark, Fabio Wardley. These fights that bounce between the fighters. It's just great to watch. And Ortiz, like you said, I think after that second knockdown, he got up from that second knockdown and went, do you know what, I'm not fucking losing this, and just pretty much won everything from there on out, and including, I agree with you, that round. So I had that one as a 9-9. It easily could have gone to Bohachuk, and I don't think there would have been a huge amount of uproar from it, compared to sometimes how much there is. But that's twice in 2 weeks now, and obviously we're going to talk about Ortiz Jr. versus Crawford, as obviously Ben rightly called last weekend. But that's twice now in 2 weeks that two Eastern European fighters have caused some of the big names in America some serious problems. Madrimov and Bohachuk, yeah, they both might have lost that fight, but they both kind of gone up in my stock in terms of what I see for them as a fighter and how much I rate them both. So Ben, I'll let you talk about that. Vergil Ortiz Crawford, you called it. Turki Alalshikh has now said that that's the fight he's going to make. We said that this was going to be a guaranteed knockout, and obviously we said Crawford, Madrimov was going to be this, that, and the other. But what's that fight going to look like, Ortiz Crawford?
Yeah, like we said, with the Crawford and Madrimov fight, it was a tough test stepping up in weight. But after watching that on Saturday night, I think this Ortiz fight could even be tougher for Crawford, because I feel like Ortiz has got the ability to sort of walk through shots a bit more. and he has got the danger of, if he hits you, you are going down. And it's a matter of if Crawford could deal with that power. We know how good Crawford is at counter punching, and that's his style. He's more of a defensive fighter. So I think it'd make for a really interesting fight, and I think it might prove to be a bit more difficult for Crawford than the Madrimov fight was.
Yeah, completely agree. I thought that Madrimov fight, we seen something in Crawford that we haven't seen before, and that's getting tested. And he got pushed in that fight, and a lot of people, like you say, last week we were saying that Madrimov won and Crawford, blah 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 blah. But yeah, that Vergil Ortiz fight is definitely a fight that I wouldn't mind watching. And obviously Turki Alalshikh, well, I was quite shocked that he was ringside. Went into the changing rooms and was talking to him and saying that's the fight he wants to make next. And if that's the case, yeah, sign me up, because I think it's much more watchable than that Canelo Alvarez fight. Because in that Canelo Alvarez fight, we knew what we were getting, really. Because as much as a lot of people would back Crawford, the weight, that's the only thing where you can maybe, when you're making your prediction for that fight, you're going to probably go for Canelo because he's natural at that weight and all that. But yeah, listen, if that's the fight next for Crawford, yeah, sign me up. I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing with Turki Alalshikh more and more is, obviously we saw the Crawford Madrimov fight, and it was a huge fight in terms of, you know, the names that were two fighting, but it wasn't the most exciting fight. And Turki Alalshikh, I think, took one look at that and went, "Nah, I'm all right with that." He wants to make fights that the fans want to see, and that Ortiz Bohachuk fight we saw, the time it took for them to decide whether or not that first round was a knockdown or not. The crowd was booing, they were going crazy because they just wanted to see the fight. That's what they were there for, because it was just, you know, utterly enthralling, brilliant to watch. And I think Turki Alalshikh wants to make fights that people want to see, and Ortiz Jr. versus Crawford, or Crawford versus Ortiz, is a fight that people want to see because it will be exciting. It will be exciting for however many rounds it goes on, and the chance of it ending in a finish is reasonable, which is what, you know, it's what people want to see. And I'm enjoying Turki Alalshikh's little kind of tour of America he's doing, and making sort of appearances here and there. And, you know, his media, I don't know if we're going to see it after or before the Wembley show. You know, Turki Alalshikh will pop up in, you know, York Hall, or, you know, some bizarre venue in some arena in Blackpool or something. I wouldn't mind it. But, like, it's great. I like what he's doing. And, you know, we got a little bit of slander when we backed Turki Alalshikh over Canelo last weekend in terms of that situation. And, you know, people raised the fair point. Canelo doesn't need Turki Alalshikh. No, he doesn't. You're right. And Tank Davis doesn't need him. You're right. He doesn't. But what Turki Alalshikh is doing for boxing is, you know, on the next level, and you can't back it. And I suppose before we defer onto some of those things, I talked about the rest of this card as well. Gabriela Fundora maintained her IBF World Fly. Cecilia Breckhouse, again, WBC interim. You know, I forget what age she is now. I think it's 42 or something like that. She's still doing it at a high level. What did you make of the performances, Ben?
Yeah, like you said, with Brackhouse, I think with the win there, she's set herself up now as the mandatory for Emma Corzin's title. So it's another brilliant women's title fight to watch. Fundora then with a shutout win to maintain her world title, so they've kept the titles in the family. I think her brother, I think it's expected he's going to fight Errol Spence for his title defence, which is another possible fight for Ortiz then as well. He could go for the winner of that. I think he did speak about it after the fight. But yeah, two very impressive performances. And overall, another good card in America is expected, really. And following on from what you said with Turki Alalshikh, it's just, it'd be nice to see him obviously involved heavily at the Wembley show, and he's just putting on the fights that people want to see. I think that's why people and us ourselves have backed him, is because he's a fan of the sport that really puts on the fights that a few years ago before his involvement we might never have seen. So it's a really good time for boxing at the moment.
Yeah, like you say, he puts on the fights for us fans, and that's what we want, don't we? We want to see the best against the best. And a lot of people are talking about, you know, this is probably going to get clipped, but Canelo Alvarez, he's not fighting who we want him to fight, is he? You know, we all want that Benavidez fight, and he's trying to swerve it by doing a all Mexican fight with Munguia. And then he's obviously fighting Belanga. It's not the fights we want to see, is it? We want to see Canelo Alvarez up against the best. But the argument that you can make is that he's done it already. He's fought Gennady Golovkin 3 times. He's fought Floyd Mayweather. He's made himself a name. Now he can enjoy it. And, I can't blame him because he's making millions and millions of pounds, of dollars. But yeah, listen, what Turki Alalshikh's doing for this sport, and now what he's doing over in America as well. We've had it over here in Britain. We're going to see some more. The fights that he can make now with the American market involved is massive for the sport.
I can't wait to cut out that whole middle bit where Harry gave Canelo credit and then just leave the front at the end where he slags him off. The views. I can already see the likes coming up on my notifications. The other fight that we haven't spoke about, and we didn't really talk a huge amount in the preview. I think you made a back end comment at Josh Warrington, and that was the only real time we spoke about it. Luis Alberto Lopez and Angelo Leo fight for the IBF World Feather, and what ended up in the 10th round being possibly one of the knockouts of the year. If you haven't seen it already, go and search it up on YouTube. Angelo Leo got the win on that one for the IBF World Feather. It is the most beautiful lead hook, kind of gazelle punch jumping into it. It's the kind of punch that Tank Davis sets up and dreams of every fight. It was an unbelievable shot and a proper lights out knockout. I mean, I think you said, Harry, when we were just chatting before Ben joined, about you were going to bring it up. Is it your knockout of the year, do you reckon? Or it's certainly up there?
Definitely. I think, that it gives Echo Esserman's knockout a run for its money, don't it? But yeah, massive upset for Angelo Leo there. How many people had him winning? That Alberto Lopez has come over to this side of the pond and he's beaten the likes of Michael Conlon, your favourite Josh Warrington. But yeah, wow. To claim that IBF heavyweight title in that fashion is incredible, and there's no better way of winning a fight by a clear knockout. And that knockout, I'm just watching it now. Oof, ouch.
Yeah, surprisingly, I haven't actually managed to see the knockout yet, so that's the first thing I'm going to do once we've finished with this podcast and give it a watch.
It's one of those. It goes back to when we were talking way back in one of our first episodes. I remember saying about what's the best knockout. And it's those, and we were talking about lead hook, uppercut, these sorts of things. Ultimately, the best knockouts are those one-shot ones where it's just one shot and they just kind of stand back and watch it happen because they know they don't need to land anything else, which is exactly what it was. And while we're on the topic of big shots, possibly knockdowns, we saw in the first round of that Ortiz Bohachuk fight the use of that instant replay. It took them a couple rounds to sort it out and to score that shot as a knockdown, which was a knockdown. What do we think of that, bringing that kind of technology into boxing? I can already see the title, VAR coming to boxing sort of thing. It is that sort of thing. And if we were to see it, in what sort of way would we want to see it? I know, Ben, you're the promoter. How would you like to see it if we did see it?
Yeah, I was watching the fight back Sunday morning, and obviously with the knockdown I was watching, I was thinking that's surely a knockdown, and they haven't given it. And then a few rounds pass. I think it gets to round 4 then before they look at the replay and then let the ref know that it is a knockdown. So then he has to take time to tell both corners. It slows the fight down a bit. It's interesting because obviously, on a different night, possibly that could have been the difference for Bohachuk winning the fight. Obviously, I know he didn't win on the scorecards, but that knockdown on a different night could have been the difference and made him or secured his world title. But it's an interesting one because, as well, I was thinking in terms of the fighters for Ortiz, it must have been frustrating because he's gone 2 or 3 rounds where he's thought, right, it hasn't been ruled a knockdown, so I'm fine. I've probably still got a chance of winning that round. And then he's told it is a knockdown, so your mind goes from, okay, I might have nicked the first round to I've definitely lost it, and I've lost it 10-8, so I'm already 2 down. So it completely affects your sort of the remainder of your fight then and the plan for your fight. And the other thing, we've seen it a lot in football with the sort of VAR, how much it slows it down. I think it brought a bit of frustration in the crowd where they were taking a couple of minutes to decide what was happening, tell everyone what had happened, and then it can get to the point where it's just getting in the way more than it's helping. So I think it needs to be sort of streamlined a bit to make sure it's quick and it can be moved on at a faster pace.
Yeah. I didn't even realise there was instant replays in boxing until last week with that Steve Nelson fight. And yeah, I thought it was a clear knockdown when I saw it straight away, but obviously they went back and checked. But what I didn't understand was they came back after, 3 rounds, and Vergil Ortiz is just getting into his stride, into his rhythm. And now he has to go back to his corner and think, hang on a minute, we could be level here going into round 5, 2-2. And it just changes your mindset. And yeah, I didn't understand why it took, 3 rounds to make the decision when it was quite clear that it was a knockdown. But yeah, I'm a fan of it. I think I wouldn't mind seeing it over here in Britain, but if it's anything like VAR, we don't want it to ruin boxing, with the decisions it makes. Because I'm more of a rugby fan here, but for football fans, apparently it ruins the game, and that's why you two championship fans quite like it, don't you? Because you don't have to bother with it in the championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating when it's not there, but you go, well, it's fine because there's nothing you can do about it. The frustration really comes when it is there and it doesn't do its job properly. And I can already see it. Heavyweight undisputed fight, a knockdown happens. There's the technology in place to sort it, and they don't do it, and it opens up a whole nother can of worms. I think as well, the problem is what you look at with boxing is obviously we see a lot of the sort of smaller, lower level fights that we go to, where there's maybe one judge and it's the referee, or one judge and the referee. If you were to do this properly, it would have to be that there is probably a separate person whose job it is to do that, and then to inform the judges, and then they can inform the referee at the start of a new round, and then they can inform or whatever. But we already see it when people can pay for more judges, and a lot of the big promoters do so, but a lot of the smaller promoters don't do it. And at what point do you start bringing that in? Is it a world title? Is it a European title, British title, whatever? And I think it's something that's inevitable, as do I think with bringing CompuBox stats and making those available to the judges. I think that's something that may be inevitable at some point in the evolution of the sport. But I also think it's something that will take a long time to iron out and to get clean and proper and used in the right way. We don't want it to be used for every little thing. At the end of the day, boxing's a boxing, and we get frustrated when our favorite fighters lose to a dodgy decision or whatever, but we move on from it. And ultimately, the better fighters tend to achieve what they were meant to achieve anyway. So it's not the be all and end all. But it'll be interesting to see. And while we're on the topic of dodgy decisions and decisions we don't maybe think should go one way or the other, the Olympic boxing is now finished. Everyone has their gold medals and bronze and silver and various other things. Will the boxing be in LA 2028 or in America 2028 for the Olympics? We don't know. It's not on the schedule currently. We don't know if there's plans to put it on the schedule or not. Do we think that's something that's going to happen? Do we think it should be in the Olympics, or have your guys' kind of patience with that ran out? I don't know about you, Harry.
Well, I think what was it? Jake Paul last week on Twitter came out and said he wants to fight for America in the next Olympic Games. Obviously, he hasn't done his research into it, but yeah, after 120 years in the Olympics, for it now to go Paris 2024, I'm reading on Twitter here, has left a stain on the games, utterly mismanaged by the IOC. I think they're the only people to blame here, is the IOC, and it's all about the lack of sex testing, what happened with that female, it was terrible, and there was no positive news about it. There was so much goodness that happened there. Lewis Richardson getting a medal, there was another British girl that was fighting for the migrant nation.
Cindy Nakamba, was it?
That's her name, Cindy. Fair play to her. That's positive news. But instead, boxing this year seemed to be talking all about the one situation and ignoring the rest. And yeah, and the other thing as well is the judging. Where I know I've probably said this now for the last 3 weeks. 2 of our fighters for GB got clearly robbed by the poor judging, and yeah, if we don't see it in LA in 4 years' time, will I be disappointed? Yes, because it's probably going to be the only sport that I'll watch, and I'll watch with passion. But listen, if breakdancing deserves more of a spot than boxing, then fair enough.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really, isn't it? Because you look at it, like you said, like there is some good stories that have come out of this Olympics, but most of the sort of main headlines have all been negative reactions, and it's not helpful for the sport, and it's not helpful for the athletes involved. But at the same time, it's a difficult one because these amateur boxers, like, it's the dream of pretty much all these amateur boxers that start out in the sport. That's the pinnacle, is to reach the Olympics and battle for that Olympic medal. And a lot of these fighters go through 4, 8, or sometimes even 12-year sort of cycles to get themselves to the point where they're competing for their nation to try and prove that they are the best in the world at what they do. And for them to miss out on that opportunity, then yeah, it's a difficult one to take for many of them, I'm sure, and it's going to take away the dreams of so many. And how do you know then if that dream is taken away? Does it affect their want to carry on with the sport?
Yeah, for me, I think as much as I share your guys' frustrations with the judging and the decisions and all of this and all the various things, I don't think the solution is to remove the sport. The solution is to do the sport right. And, no sport in the world has such a strong amateur. Amateur is not important in many sports, but in boxing, it's such a key. You cannot go pro until you've had a season, at least in the amateurs. You cannot, go pro until you've shown amateur pedigree. How many times, in football, let's say, you don't see someone go, I'm not going to sign for, I don't know, Chelsea Academy yet because I haven't won my Sunday league. Whereas you do see that in boxing. People say, I'm not going to turn pro until I win a national championship or until I win, a world championship. So I think we just got to get it right. And, if anyone can get it right, a nation like America that do boxing, everywhere, if the IOC just say to one of the many, many promoters in America and go, how do we put this on? How do we make this better? There's no need for this to be a difficult or a bad thing. We just need to make it, better, make it easier. And I don't know the solutions to that. And, like you said, with the Emene Khalif and the politics between the IBA and the IOC, it's frustrating. And frankly, as viewers, like, we don't give a shit what goes on behind the scenes. We just want to see the fights we want to see the winners we think should have won, and then, get that. So I think that LA will put it on. I think for a proud boxing nation like America to not have boxing in the Olympics would be a travesty. It would be crazy. So yeah, fingers crossed it happens, and fingers crossed we still get to continue to see boxing in the Olympics. But you never know. You never know.
Yeah, listen, boxing Olympics without boxing for me is in the Olympics because that's what you grow up watching. London 2012, Anthony Joshua winning gold, and obviously then in Rio, with Joe Joyce, and then in Japan where we had the golden era, and yeah, this year hasn't been good for Great Britain, but we still got a medal. But the one person I was talking about on Saturday night on the group chat was that Jalalov. Wow. That guy, I don't even think got out of first gear throughout the entire tournament. Didn't lose a single round on any judges' scorecards. He left his vest as well in the ring afterwards. So is that an indication that he's now fully focusing on the pro game? Fingers crossed, because listen, if this tournament was all about Uzbekistan in these fighters, that Central Asia country, it was all about that. Well, that nation is just a fantastic nation for boxing, and if that Jalalov now turns and focuses, because I want to say he's actually got a professional record, if he then goes and focuses on that, he could be causing a lot of trouble for some people in that heavyweight division.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I mean, we never really see the Soviet countries. I say the Soviet countries with the utmost respect, but it's. I don't mean that I don't want to be political about this. It's just a good way to kind of wrap up all those. And I say that in a boxing style sense, how they box generally. We don't often see those guys turn over to pro all that well. Obviously, there's people that don't follow that, Alexander Usyk, Lomachenko. There's some brilliant fighters from that part of the, but on the whole, they make brilliant amateurs. They don't always make exceptional pros, but back-to-back Olympic golds, you're bound to. It's almost inevitable that you will be at least be a very good pro. So yeah, I hope we see him turn over, and we need another generation of heavyweights, because at the moment we are seeing our sort of brilliant generation of heavyweights coming to an end. The amount of people, towards the end of their career, the Anthony Joshuas, the Tyson Furies, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder, these people that have dominated the top part of our Zhile Zhang, have dominated the top part of the heavyweight division for so long, are all not far off
Derek
hanging up the
Chisora.
gloves. Well, yeah, exactly. There's so many. You could go on. Pretty much all the good heavyweights currently are towards the back end, and Moses Atoma can't just win it all because he needs someone to fight. So fingers crossed we get another generation of brilliant heavyweights come through. Starting with maybe boxing in 2028 in the Olympics. Now the fights next weekend. I'd say it's been the quietest 2 weeks of boxing that we've had in a long, long time. And by that I mean we've only had 2 world title fights in 2 weekends, which is obscene. That would have been a good week not that long ago. But this weekend we've got Queensberry card, Denzel Bentley, which I haven't checked. Can one of you boys check if that's the one on the Boxing News app, or if it's the one in Quebec, Canada, top ranked card with Christian Mbilli? We'll start off with Mbilli because he's the third ranked. They're both. We'll go Queensberry. We'll go British. But Christian Mbilli, third ranked super middleweight behind Canelo and Jaime Munguia. And he's fighting Serhii Derevyanchenko, a near top 10 ranked. In some, I believe he is ranked top 10 in some rankings. So WBC Continental Americas, which is Mbilli's. It's mad that because Canelo has such a strong hold on that division, that we're not seeing someone like Mbilli get a world title shot soon. Fingers crossed we do at some point. Maybe Canelo moves to light heavy. I don't know, but fingers crossed that. I don't know if you boys have done any sort of prep work for that, but I just think it's crazy. You've got such a high ranked fighter that still got a regional title.
Yeah, listen, 27 wins, 23 KOs. You don't do that without being a good boxer. And he's third ranked, like you say. Canelo Alvarez is number 1. If he gets through this on Saturday night or Sunday morning for us, that's the fight to make. And Canelo Alvarez, he's probably obviously focusing on Edgar Berlanga, but he needs to start thinking about his next opponent. And Christian Mbilli fits all of those sections that you want a good fight. He's the one to go for. But there's a fight on this card that I'm actually looking forward to, and I don't know about you boys, but I do like a good heavyweight fight. Arslan Makhmudov is fighting an Italian heavyweight, Guido Vianello. Now this Vianello, his last fight was against F.A. Ajagba. I thought he won it, and that would have been a massive upset. He's some prospect, and we all know what happened to Makhmudov in not his last fight, the previous fight over in Saudi Arabia, when Ajit Kayabel put his name straight on the heavyweight mat by stopping him. That's the fight that, as well as the main event, that's probably the other fight I'm looking forward to on this card, because that Vianello, Moses Atoma was even calling him out because of how good he is. It's a great heavyweight fight, and that could be an upset there. So if you're willing to put some money on it, if you're a betting man, I wouldn't mind putting a couple of pennies on Vianello to maybe cause a big upset there.
Yeah, it should be a good fight, to be fair, but just jumping back to the main event, like you said with Mbilli, normally at someone that, if he wins this weekend, moves to 28-0, the surely puts him in line sooner rather than later for a world title shot. You can look at the WBO interim. I know the WBO title is currently held by Canelo, or even like a IBF title that's currently vacant in the weight division. But Derevyanchenko is going to be a tough test for him, even though you look at his records of 15-5. 4 of them losses come against Golovkin, Charlo, Adames, and Munguia, and none of those 4 stopped him. He's yet to be stopped as a professional in the 5 losses he's had. So I think it'd be a very impressive performance from Mbilli if he can get another stoppage. He's obviously got 23 out of 27 wins by stoppage. So if he can do it again this weekend, he'll further prove why he should be in contention for a title shot.
Yeah, I think that Canelo fight, like you mentioned, Harry, does maybe make some sense as well, because obviously Canelo is such a huge draw commercially. He doesn't really need a huge commercial draw on the other side of the bill in order to make a good fight. And I think that's part of why we've obviously seen him not work with Saudi Arabia, because he doesn't need someone else on the other side of the bill. We criticize, but we will watch that Canelo Belanga fight almost certainly. And so, I think if that Mbilli, big name in terms of, or sorry, big fighter in terms of his ability, but not necessarily a big name. So maybe it does make sense to put him the other side of the bill. But we'll wait and see. And also, if you're wondering, Harry, 5-1 is the odds that an unnamed betting site, because no one's paying us, would give you on a knockout for the Italian. So not bad odds.
Well, mark my words. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Mark my words. I'm just saying
enough.
that I wouldn't be shocked.
Fair enough. Queensbury, jumping back over to Queensbury. Denzel Bentley's defending his WBO international middleweight against Derek Ozazi. It's interesting. I was saying this beforehand to you boys. Obviously, Denzel Bentley lost to Nathan Heaney, and now has gone on and he's obviously got his WBO international, and Nathan Heaney lost his British to a brilliant two-way fight versus Brad Paul. So it's interesting how those two have kind of gone in different directions after Denzel Bentley lost. It's another great, you've got an IBO Continental Cruiserweight on the card as well. Some quality British fighters. I think, if you talk in the conversation between Matchroom and Queensbury, people have their opinions, but when we're talking domestic cards, I think Queensbury do it better than everyone. They do a really good job of filling these cards up with British prospects and having at least one or two title fights at the top of it. And I'm looking forward to it again. Do you boys back Denzel Bentley for this one? Obviously, we've got the predictions coming up, or and we don't want to give it all away. But do you back Denzel Bentley, or is there anyone other on the card that you want to you're looking out for?
Yeah, like we said, it's an interesting one with Bentley because he lost the fight to Heaney, the British title fight, which I think he'd say himself wasn't a great night for him, nor a great performance, nor his usual self. But then he bounces back a second round knockout against Danny Dignam and looked like a completely different fighter. It looks as if now, obviously with this title, he's moved on from British title level, is maybe looking upwards rather than back at that. But yeah, we'll obviously get on to the predictions, but I think it should be another good performance for Bentley. But Ortiz has obviously got the opportunity to push himself possibly towards British title level. He's only lost once, and that was against Tyler Denny back in 2021. This is his first fight, first 10-round fight since that loss to Tyler Denny, so a chance for him to really make a name for himself on Saturday night.
Yeah, moving away from the main event, that cruiserweight fight that you were talking about just then earlier, Sam, Alvarez, nicknamed the Animal. He lost his first professional fight, but since then he has stopped every single person he stepped in the ring with, and he's fighting for his first professional title this weekend. So yeah, that's definitely a fight to look out for. But yeah, Denzel Bentley, since losing to Nathan Heaney, he seems to be going out there into the ring to prove a point that he's still one of the best in Britain. And if he gets through this fight on Saturday night, he could call for that Heaney rematch. We were all talking about that potentially Heaney could be having a trilogy for the British. Yeah, that's fine. But if that fight isn't made, get Bentley back in the ring with Heaney just to settle the score, because that would be another hell of a British fight. But yeah, you talk about the Queensbury. They do put on good shows. We're going to talk about the predictions. Luke McCormack as well makes his return. What a professional debut he had, a knockout win. Joshua Frankham as well. He's in a very good fight. And yeah, it's just a great card. And you talk about boxing. I believe we're talking about it in a minute. This weekend is definitely one that's going to be a good one again, because when was the last time we've had a bad weekend of boxing? Maybe last weekend, because we didn't have any boxing here in Britain that we could watch, and we had Misfits on, and that's at the moment, that's slowly but surely dying out. Some people could be cheering, some people could be crying, but yeah, listen, this is going to be another great night of boxing, and it's at the York Hall. and all the good fights happen at your call.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it, Ari, and we will. What I think we'll do is we'll jump onto our predictions, and then we'll finish off talking about the big first ever historic female Welsh title fight happening here in Wales. I say here in Wales. I'm not in Wales at the moment, but we'll say that figuratively because we're a Welsh boxing podcast. But we'll do the predictions if you can get if you boys can get your phones up and you're ready. Then we'll talk about that big historic card. So. The first fight, you mentioned it, Joshua Frankham, super welterweight 6-rounder versus Artom Spatar of, I want to say Estonia, but it's one of those countries I think it is Estonia. Harry's nodding. We'll take that. My flag knowledge coming in big there. Joshua Frankham, I'm going to go for a points decision on this one because he's not that kind of fighter. It is a 6 rounds, still difficult to get a finish. I think he'll get a comfortable win, but I think with Frankham, we're not really going to see too many finishes until we start to move on to those sort of 8 and 10 rounders. What about you, Harry?
Yeah, completely agree. He's got 6 rounds to work, and he'll outclass his Estonian opposition. So yeah, points decision win for Frank.
Yeah, I think we've all gone for the same prediction there. I also just want to mention quickly as well, because it's not on the app, the Ben Fail fight that's on the card. He's obviously looking to go 7-0, and it'd be interesting to keep an eye on his fight because obviously he's had, not just him, but his brother's had a bit of a spat with Junaid Bostain a few months ago, where he was just calling them all out. There was about 3 or 4 of them there, I think, and he was just standing in the middle of all of them, going at them all. So hopefully at some point, once obviously they've both maybe picked up a title and developed a bit more, we could get that as a domestic clash, which would be a very good watch. But yeah, Frankham by decision I've gone for as well.
I completely forgot about that with Boston. He was stood there, wasn't he? And there was the couple of them there, and he was there just giving it the big one. I respect it. He's a matchroom fighter, Boston, isn't he? He's not even a Queensbury fighter, I don't believe. And he was at a Queensbury show giving it the big one. Fair enough to him. Fair enough. Luke McCormack, super lightweight, 6-rounder versus Yevgeny Alenik, Ukrainian. See, I know my flags. Luke McCormack for this one. Ben, what's your prediction?
Again, I've gone McCormack points decision. I think just with the 6 rounds, it's difficult sometimes to get that stoppage, and the Ukrainians always tend to be quite tidy fighters. So, yeah, I think McCormack by a decision.
I'm going to disagree. I believe 6 rounds is enough for McCormack to get his second stoppage win of his professional career.
Fair enough. I'm going for agree with Ben here. McCormack points decision because his opponent's never been stopped in his career. He's basically in his career, he either wins by knockout or loses by a points decision. So I back him to McCormack's going to win this one quite comfortably, I think, but I don't think he's going to have the power to stop the tough Ukrainian. And also, I just realized I haven't mentioned yet. I won the predictions last weekend. Ben's still in a bit of a slump. He's been struggling recently, getting me and Harry to pick up some points. So I need to get back on it. Alois Yumbi, cruiserweight 10-rounder. Harry, you've obviously mentioned about the KO rate of this man. You know, he gets a lot of finishes. He gets every finish, in fact. But do you think he's going to get the finish in this one?
Yeah, I believe Yumbi will stop him late. But I think Baradi, however you pronounce his surname, is going to be very durable, and it's probably the toughest test of his career. But you need that in your career early on, and yeah, but I think Yumbi gets a late stoppage here.
Yeah, I've gone Yumbi stoppage as well, and it's a chance for him to put himself in the mix with a very good cruiserweight scene in Britain, and I think potentially after this you could see him maybe fighting for a English title, especially if obviously Vidal Riley, who currently holds it, is going to move up to a British title shot, so he could have a vacant English title fight on his hands in the future.
Yeah, it'd be a good fight. I've gone the same. I think he's going to get the knockout. You know, his record precedes him. You'd be silly to predict otherwise. And then in the main event, Denzel Bentley versus Derek Osazi. Obviously is it a 12-rounder, I believe, actually, for that one? It is a 10-rounder at middleweight. I think he's going to get the knockout. I think Denzel Bentley over 10 rounds is a dangerous proposition for anyone. And I just think, even though the other guy on the other side of him's probably quite a durable fighter, older guy, I think he's probably going to get the finish in this one. What about you, Harry?
Like I said earlier, he's out to make a point now, ain't he? That he's still up there with the best in Britain after that Heaney loss. So yeah, I agree. I think he gets another late stoppage win. And like his last fight was a second round knockout win. I think he gets it in the 7th or 8th.
Yeah, we've all gone for the same again. I think the Denzel Bentley redemption arc is going to continue on Saturday night, so I think he'll pick up another stoppage win.
Fair enough. Well, we don't normally mention the rounds, but seeing as me and Ben have got identical predictions, we're probably gonna have to say what rounds we go for on this one, because that's what won me the predictions last week. Obviously, Harry, if you get the knockout on McCormack fight, then you win it. Ben, what have you gone for? How many rounds?
I've got 25 rounds down.
Oof, I got 27, so this is going to be tight. Whoever gets the closest on the rounds obviously
It's gonna
wins
be close.
overall. So it'll go.
It'll be
go down to
26.
it. Yeah, probably, and
Uh,
I don't know who wins then. We'll have to do rock paper scissors or something.
Me.
No, well, maybe if you get the points. This weekend, like we mentioned it, like you kind of alluded to, and I mean, I don't have a count on it, but I think we're probably nearing double figures about how many times we've mentioned this on the podcast. Ashley Johnson, Victoria Perkins, the first ever female Welsh title fight in Llanelli in the Selwyn Samuel Centre this Saturday. I imagine there might be a small handful of tickets available if you're lucky. So if you are about, then obviously message the fighters, see if you can get your hands on some tickets. Other fighters on the card, we've got a brilliant card. Willie Gilhaney's got himself a really difficult fight. Conor McIntosh, another Welsh title holder. Angelo Dragoni, another Welsh title holder, fighting on the card. JD Cuervo making his debut, managed by Joe Cordina, trained by Gary Lockett. It's a brilliant card, and I'm sure there's a few guys making their debuts as well, or one guy making his debut. It's a brilliant card. It's probably one of the best cards we've seen in Wales recently, and yeah, fair play to Dan Francis and Richie. What more is there to say?
yeah, we've got to do some really cool stuff since we started this podcast over the last few months, but we've sort of been involved with this or known about this fight since its inception, really, and it's been really good to be involved with some of the videos and stuff we've done, the interviews we've had with all the people involved as well. And I think it's possibly the most excited I've been for a fight night in a long time, just because it's obviously a historic moment. It's never going to happen again. So it's a huge night for both the fighters. You can see from when we've spoken to them how much it means to the both of them, and only one of them on Saturday night are going to be able to have their hand raised and be the first woman to take that belt home. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Saturday night is the sort of moment in history where you say, I was there. And, it's the name of the event's called Showdown at the Selwyn. It's going down. And that main event, Ashley Johnson against Victoria Perkins, they've both got experience in the kickboxing world. It's a proper 50-50. Victoria's got the height, the reach and everything. But Ashley Johnson, something tells me that, I don't think that's going to affect her that much. But yeah, talking about the card, Conor McIntosh against Owen Durnan could potentially be fight of the night, because we saw Owen Durnan when he was last in Wales against James Atkins in a very competitive fight. So yeah, watch out for that. Angelo Dragoni makes his return, the Welsh super lightweight champion, against the Boogeyman, his opponent's nickname, from Bulgaria, Ivan Gitsov. As you said, JD Cuervo, managed by Joe Cordina, makes his professional debut. What's going to be in store for him? He's managed by Joe Cordina, so he must have something good about him. Levi Griffiths as well is on the card. Willie Gilhaney, Lewis Parfitt as well. I thought he was really, really impressive the last time we saw him, and he's got a very good fan base as Lewis, as we knew when people were screaming behind us screaming. But yeah, it's just another brilliant night, and all credit to Dan Francis and obviously Richie Garner as well for putting on the show, and what an honour to be sponsoring it. And this time next week we'll be sat in this exact spot and history would have been made. Someone will be number one in Wales, wow. let's go. That's all I can't wait. I literally can't wait. It's my first trip down west as well for the boxing. So, yeah, very excited.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it there. Obviously, we're sponsoring the show, and if we haven't actually prefaced about how important this show is, we've managed to convince Harry to part way with his hard-earned cash in order to sponsor this show. And if something doesn't tell you that this is an important card, a piece of history, Harry Tovey has spent money to sponsor this show. He tried to drive a hard bargain with Dan. We came to an agreement. Here we go. Terms have been agreed. And yeah, it's going to be a brilliant show. There's loads of good content hopefully coming from the weekend. We'll be down at the weigh-ins. We'll be at the show. We'll be there. We'll be the first in the door. We'll be the last out the door near enough. So really looking forward to that. Thank you all for tuning in to another brilliant episode of the Punch a Chance podcast, if I say so myself. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, follow us everywhere you can, share it about, get subscribing, and obviously check out the content from this weekend. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Puncher's Chance. Puncher's Chance podcast.